WandaVision is the latest piece of the ever-sprawling Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's a drama, it's sci-fi, it's a tribute. It's Marvel Studios' first real foray into the world of television. No shade towards the Netflix shows, but WandaVision feels more like the MCU we know. It's a love letter to American television and its history, but above all else, it's the escape that we've all been needing from the weirdness of life lately. Now, stick with me, I will get to WandaVision, but first, just a little bit of background. So 2020 was not a fun time for a lot of frightening and very urgent reasons. But among the more vapid reasons, it was the first year since 2008 that saw no feature film releases from Marvel Studios. Theaters were closed and lots of movies got pushed back, including the ever-marching Marvel Studios release slate. Now, I know that a lack of Marvel movies was not even close to the biggest issue that the film world faced this past year. Theaters are still unsafe and at risk of disappearing. There was a halt in live-action productions, and as a result, many creative people were out of work. Those things and many more are way more important than a lack of Marvel movies. But I do think that this lack is still significant, and in turn, so is the return of the MCU in 2021. I am aware that Disney Marvel's movies are by no means the peak of cinema as an art form. They are a key factor in Disney's troubling hegemony over the filmmaking industry. A lot of space is taken up in the film world by art that is overwhelmingly similar. Consequently, there's less space on the big screen for smaller movies and unique voices. Disney Marvel dominance broadly is probably not a great thing. Now, with all of that out of the way, I still get very excited with each Marvel release, and on some level, I feel like this cinematic universe is a miracle. Looking back at the last decade, there are few works of art that brought people together more often than a release from Marvel Studios. These are the modern-day legendary epics. They're the archetypes and events that almost everyone recognizes. Each release is practically a religious gathering attended by millions of devotees. The Church of MCU. How many of us have those friends who only come out of the woodwork when a new Marvel movie comes out? Each new release, you'd all get together and share this communal experience. And it was an experience that didn't end when the credits rolled. I'm not talking about the post-credit scenes, I mean the endless discussion we took home with us after the Avengers. The fan theories we'd throw around with friends after Infinity War. We cheered when Bruce Banner revealed his secret. We remember that moment when, against all odds, Spider-Man thwipped his way into Civil War. We were together when we watched heroes turn to dust, when an ordinary kid from Brooklyn wielded the power of a god. These are some of the biggest shared cultural moments of the last decade, and maybe even of all time. Until 2020, there was no sign of slowing. To be honest, I didn't really notice that I missed the MCU until I saw that familiar opening fanfare on episode 1 of WandaVision. Sure, I was bummed that Black Widow didn't release when it was supposed to, but I also wasn't desperate for more Marvel in my life. Even now, I don't necessarily miss Marvel. I miss the way it brought us together. That is, until WandaVision brought us together again. Kind of. WandaVision is a unique story for Marvel in a lot of ways. Each episode is a different decade of television, and consequently, it has its own visual style inspired by the tropes of that era. As a result, most of WandaVision is visually unlike any other Marvel project. Lots of people over the years have remarked that Marvel stuff tends to look the same from movie to movie. There are exceptions, but there is also a signature Marvel look to most of their films. Don't get me wrong, WandaVision also has moments featuring the typical Marvel aesthetic, but in general, the visuals in WandaVision are a breath of fresh air compared to other pieces of Marvel media. In terms of writing, it is obviously much more concerned with the psychology of its characters. The show essentially takes place in Wanda's imagination. Sort of. It prompts us to ask, why is Wanda doing this, rather than who will cameo next? Of course, this doesn't stop fans who've been taught by Marvel to look for Easter eggs and everything to solely focus on references to the broader MCU. But I think it's safe to say that the thrust of this show's narrative is primarily focused on Wanda's psychology. Especially early on, the only times we see a break in the old school pastiche is when Wanda is briefly shaken out of it. The characters outside of the Hex that we root for are less concerned with Wanda's abilities and more so with why she's done this. The mystery isn't surrounding a MacGuffin, a magical object, or a laser in the sky. It's surrounding Wanda's emotions. We're not looking for a shiny rock or trying to stop a big blue laser. We're trying to figure out why Wanda reacted the way that she did. Here's where, probably unintentionally, Wanda's character parallels our collective pain at the moment. American television is Wanda's comfort zone. We see that whenever she's been in a moment of distress in her life, she escapes into the world of sitcoms. It's where she finds her happy ending when the world can't provide one. Wanda has lost a lot, but those familiar shows are always there. Likewise, 2020 took a lot away from us. A lot of us are alone. We can't share a drink with friends. We can't hug our loved ones. Some of us have lost those we love to our world's incompetence in handling a new threat. And I'm sure I'm not alone here, have spent a lot of 2020 grieving a future we lost and a past that we might never get back. There's no way Marvel could have anticipated it, but there's a strange meta quality to Wanda's own grief and escape into the world of TV. I think it's safe to say that a lot of the world has experienced some kind of collective trauma, not entirely unlike Wanda's own. And just like Wanda, we got to escape into the TV every single week. Every week we had a big cultural media moment to look forward to again. An escape from the pain of reality. An escape from everything we've lost over the past year. While WandaVision was on, we were fully absorbed into a much less frightening world. One where, despite their psychological issues, heroes do exist. We got to escape into a world where powerful people do what they can to make the world a better place. That idea, even without the superpowers, sounds fantastical. During this moment of collective pain, WandaVision gave us all something big and exciting to escape into. Every week we had a moment together where, instead of theorizing over increasing case numbers and sharing a fear of what could come next, we shared theories about where this show could be going. A lot of us, for the first time since Endgame, got to experience something big all together. Though we weren't in the same physical space, WandaVision's weekly release schedule had us all occupying the same thought space every week. I know that WandaVision isn't the first show from the past year that gave us something to connect over, but I can't ignore the significance of this show being about a character coping with their trauma by escaping into classic TV show tropes. Right now, we're all like Wanda, anticipating that next episode for a moment of relief from the uncertainty and pain of the real world. So, if we look at Wanda as a projection of our own collective grief and escape, what does that say about us? Is our escape from the pain of the world problematic? Because at this point, it's safe to say that Wanda's response to her grief is not appropriate. It's fair to need an escape, but as soon as that escape starts hurting other people, limiting their freedoms, it stops being okay. Wanda is escaping a constant state of grief and a resulting sense of emptiness. This isn't something that she can solve on her own. Likewise, we cannot solve our collective grief and current repetitive emptiness on our own. As a result, right now, we're all in need of an escape. Maybe we can take Wanda's response to grief as a warning. It's okay to need an escape sometimes, but don't let your current pain hurt those around you. Also, don't let the charismatic witches in your life take advantage of your pain. And I'm not by any means saying that Marvel Studios is solving the world's problems. In fact, in the long run, it's more likely that Disney Marvel causes more problems in the world than they solve. What I am saying is that our collective pain and subsequent escape into culturally significant media is really beautifully paralleled by the story in WandaVision. Furthermore, the stories we experience together hold an incredible amount of weight, and I feel lucky that we get to experience them together right now. Scientists and activists are the ones making the world a better place right now, but the artists who tell us stories that resonate provide a much-needed escape when the weight of the world is too heavy to carry. There are much bigger problems in the world than a lack of Marvel movies. There are injustices that need to be reckoned with and fought against. There is a sickness that needs to be solved. But we can't work forever, and sometimes we all need some rest. There's a lot to deal with in the world right now, and it's a pleasure to have a moment of escape. So thank you, WandaVision, for letting us escape into the problems of your world every week for a while. When that Marvel fanfare opened for the first episode of WandaVision, I got a little misty-eyed. As silly as it sounds to get sentimental over a massive corporate product, I can't deny that these stories have had an effect on me. Especially right now, the MCU provides a much-needed comfort and familiarity in an increasingly uncertain world. Marvel Studios, I've missed you. Seeing as this was recorded before the release of the last episode of WandaVision, I'm dying to know, did they stick the landing? Were you satisfied with WandaVision? It's okay if not, but I want to know why not. Where would you rank it amongst the rest of the MCU? Let me know down below.